back to another episode of the Empowered Intuitive Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Taylor Henderson, the Kynoch Witch, and I'm joined with my beautiful co-host, Petra Costa from When Magic Awakes. And today we are talking all about the truth behind spooky season, our Halloween special, because this episode is coming out the day after Halloween. And so, Petra, how much do you love Halloween? Because I, for one, am a massive fan of all of the Halloween decor and stuff you can get now here.
Oh my goodness. Lombards, the paper people, are only in business because of how much money I spend at them every year. We love Halloween so much in this household, and it's always been a huge, huge thing. You get to dress up, you get to have a party, and you get to put decorations all over your house, like literally, and spooky ones at that. Like it's so up my alley, it's ridiculous. So why wouldn't I love it? It's my favorite. And I call it my favorite holiday. How American and I. Oh, it's my
So
favorite
American.
holiday. It's
So
my favorite.
American.
So American. So it's not that I bought in to the whole Americanization, commercialism around Halloween. I knew there were deeper origins to it, and
Yeah.
I loved some of the concepts. But they're a little bit out of my league. I knew that it came from, an All Hallows Eve and all of those kind of more ancient festivals. And I knew it was from Samhain, but that's about as far as I went back. So, Tay, I'm going to throw to you to give us some more detail on what that is.
You nailed that pronunciation there with the Samhain.
I tried real hard. I've practiced it over and over.
So Samhain is one of the cross-quarter fire festivals celebrated by the old Celtic Gaelic peoples. And it is quite an ancient tradition of honoring ancestors as well as beloved dead. But it was actually deemed quite a liminal space of time. So you weren't just opening up your house and your ritual space to ancestors and beloved dead and stuff like that. You are opening it up to all sorts of spiritual denizens. So we have the Fae, notably, crossing over from the ethereal planes. And I should say, too, it was a liminal time because it was the fire festival which intersected between the autumn and the winter solstices.
Yep.
And so moving from autumn and the last harvest, celebrating the last harvest and that warmer time, moving into the darkness and the death of the year.
Yep.
And so this was a massive week-long festival for
Yeah, lots of
Celtic Gaelic peoples.
bonfires,
Yeah,
a
so
lot of celebration.
yeah,
Yeah. Now, my understanding was that at that point in time, the priests of the time, the priests that were in charge of a lot of these ceremonies, because of the liminality of this, where the veils were thinned, that they were able to predict, or that was when they get the prophecy for the year ahead of how harvest was going to go, how the life for their people was going to go in the year coming after that.
yeah, so it was actually the sacred duty of the Druids to ensure that these fire festivals ran smoothly. They had really strict laws and procedures on what was accepted during this time and what wasn't. If you committed a crime during this time, your punishment was death. If you chose to not honor or venerate or hold space for this time, you were supposedly punished severely by the gods and the spirit beings. So you put a target on your back for hauntings and things like that. So being involved in the actual festival itself and giving offerings and things like that was expected of you as a member of the Celtic community in your village. And Druids had to make sure that these things went smoothly. They were lawmen, they were chieftains, they were spiritual advisors, they were up here in the echelon of Celtic peoples.
Yep.
And so with the fire, it's absolutely fascinating because bonfire is the big staple behind the four quarter fire festivals. They're celebrating the harvest, and in this case it's the final harvest. And so everyone would get together with their final harvest offerings, make those offerings, and while they were gathering that harvest, they would let the fires in their homes burn out to complete embers.
Yep.
And they would go to the community bonfire and then take a flame from that fire and take it back to their hearths. And so that was the fire that would sustain them through the darkness of winter, right?
That's really
Until
interesting. That's very
it
similar
is.
to the Olympic flame, isn't it? It's amazing
Yeah, yeah.
how much the crossing over there is between all of these different ceremonies.
Yeah, so there's a tradition of torch bearing there, and
Yep.
allowing that darkness to fall with the coming of Samhain and with the coming of winter, and then bring back the light, so to speak, in that dark time. So that's really fascinating, and yeah, Druids were completely all over that process. So it was quite a sacred time for the Celtic peoples. Samhain
Yep.
was.
But after that, it wasn't left there, was it? Because then we had Christianity coming over, and they decided that they wanted to create a day. My understanding is there was 2 days created. All Saints Day
Yep.
came in, and also All Souls Day. So
Yep.
one was on the 1st, and I think one was on the 2nd of November, and that happened around about 1,000,
Yeah. So
CE.
in the 5th century AD, we've got
Yep.
Pope Boniface, who decided that he was going to try and incept the concept of Samhain and Christianize it, because they were all about driving the snakes out of Ireland at that time. And so they actually decided that they were going to make a day around May, and they were going to name that All Souls Day and celebrate it similarly to how Samhain is, but instead of honoring ancestors and beloved dead, they're honoring saints and you
Yep.
know the Holy Father,
The
um,
Holy Dead.
the Holy Dead.
Yeah.
um, and then that didn't really take. So, introducing Pope Gregory in the 9th century, who then came in and was like, okay, well, we can't appropriate that so far away. We have to be adjacent to it. And so he brought in that All Saints Day and All Hallows Eve would be celebrated on the November 1st to 2nd as a
Okay.
as a
And obviously,
holy time.
All Hallow Mass, All Hallow Eve comes from the Middle English, so we can see where Halloween's come from. So
Yes,
yeah,
yep, exactly.
yeah,
So we've got the appropriation of customs and traditions from this ancient earth-based practice of honoring the dead and welcoming spirits into our realm. And it's funny because looking at the traditions from that time, it wasn't so happy and cheery like Halloween is now. I mean, you think about the origins of costumes and stuff and jack-o'-lanterns. Petra, you went into this quite a bit in
yeah.
your research.
Well, two of these things, and one of them, I must admit, I got a bit of an idea from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and an episode that she had. But the concept of with trick or treating and the dressing up was around the fact that because it was a limited time, and dead ghouls, spirits, fae, all of these different things literally walked among us, that people dressed themselves up so that they could
Yeah,
just blend in. So hopefully these evil spirits wouldn't pay attention to
like
them.
a
So it's
like a
like
spiritual camouflage.
it's spiritual camouflage. It's just like
Yeah.
blending in, which makes it that little bit more spooky when you think of all of these kids just walking around now, that are just walking around dressed up, and we're like, logic we're saying here is they're just walking around with all of these
Yeah,
spirits and
yeah,
everything.
yeah. They think
Um,
they don't realize they're actually blending into the spirits when they're
yeah,
going out and getting candy. Like,
yeah,
you can really tell that that's the agenda when you look at like 1920s Halloween costumes. Like,
yeah,
they're terrifying. Like, these
yeah,
kids get around with like pig faces and shit. Like
yeah.
that would scare the
No,
crap out of me if that
exactly.
rocked up at my door. Just saying, you would get a
Well,
bat, not candy.
the whole treat thing that kind of came about was because people there's two different ways and they've sort of like kind of merged.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you've obviously got the fact that people are dressing up, but people truly did believe that these spirits, and often they were worried about the evil spirits. They weren't worried
yeah,
about their
yeah.
family spirits that they'd welcomed to the home, that they'd set a place for, that they'd done all that. They were worried about all of the evil malign spirits that were coming around and them knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And so to appease those the spirits, they would have money or treats, whether it be food and offerings, effectively saying, here's the offering. Can you please leave this space?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's where the origins of some of the trick or treating comes from, which I find is even more kind of spooky.
That's funny because I read a little bit differently with the trick or treating that in Ireland and Scotland, children would go around to houses and sing songs to the dead whilst dressed up in their costumes. And payment for that offering was these little cakes, these little soul cakes.
Yep.
And I thought that was fascinating. And the trick
It's souling. It
part,
was called souling, wasn't it? They
yeah,
would go around, it
yeah,
was actually called souling. And that's where I think a lot of these things are just similar enough that people combine them. It's like you have,
yeah,
Day of the
yeah,
Deads and you have this Samhain and you have these different things. And it's like, oh, let's just merge them into one thing because surely
yeah.
they come from the same.
It's become homogenized.
It really
Yeah.
has. And there was another thing I was looking up because, okay, it's Halloween. What do? We bob for apples. Where does the
Yeah.
bobbing for apples come from? And this is sort of like kind of where the priest, the druid priest of the day would prophesize about what was going on. This was where women were to see whether they would have a favorable match during the course of the year. So if they had all these apples, which were either, you bobbed your head into them or they would be hanging from a string,
Yeah.
and you would, if you took a bite and you grabbed the apple first bite, you were going to find someone that year and it was going to be a successful marriage. If it was two bites, you would have trouble during the course of your marriage. And if it was three bites, it was not going to work. But you'd still have to get married. But it just
Interesting.
wasn't going to work. So I just love that. Like, we already know we don't think it's going to work, but whatever. We'll
Apple
just go with it.
divination.
So I thought that was interesting. And something that hasn't really translated and come down, but freaked me out when I was reading about it, was another thing they did where they would get young women to walk downstairs with a mirror and they would look over their shoulder. I think it was their left shoulder, which just makes it even more whatever. And they would have to look, and if they caught a glimpse of everyone in the mirror, that was their future mate. That was the person they were to marry. And
What?
I'm like saying, I'm sorry if I'm looking in a mirror and you're creeping up behind me.
Yeah, I'm calling a
I'm
priest.
running in the
What
other.
the hell? What the
I'm running
hell?
in the other direction. I'm not playing at that. So
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that
No.
that
That
was
that reminds me of that scene in The Conjuring where she's got like the little music box and she's looking for Rory and he like pops up in the mirror and I'm like, nah,
nah,
no, no,
no.
thank you.
Now we're going to talk about in another episode of why mirrors freak us out.
Yeah,
And they're like,
absolutely.
they're great things and they're wonderful, but there's some real history behind mirrors to people to understand why I got freaked out by that concept.
Liminal spaces. That
Absolutely. So we're,
yeah.
we're we're already in this place. So where does the jack-o'-lantern come from? So I was looking at the jack-o'-lantern, and I've got a friend that comes from Canada, and he makes literally the most insane pumpkins you have ever seen.
I've
And
never
every year,
carved a jack-o'-lantern. I'm gonna have
oh
to
my
do it this
goodness, he
year.
gets the ones because only now in Australia have you been able to start getting the proper carving pumpkins. We
Yeah,
never used to be able to
yeah.
have them. And he would be able to do one, and he would carve it, and only would he carve it all out. When he pulled the all of the insides, he would have it dragging through the mouth, so it looked like it was vomiting up its
Oh,
own.
that's gnarly.
It was
Love
insane,
it. Love
insane. So
it.
it's always good to have someone that's
So
Canadian.
where tradition come from? Because I've heard a
Okay.
few things, but
Well,
I
what
even heard
I've
they
read,
used turnips at one point.
exactly. Well, this is what I read. It comes from Ireland, and where they carved turnips rather than pumpkins, because pumpkins are a more American kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, I've got all these notes written down about a person called Stingy Jack, and it's really quite boring. So I'm not even going to look at my notes. I'm just going to try and do a
That's
shorter
pretty
version.
boring.
But Stingy Jack was basically your typical old crotchety Ebenezer Scrooge kind of character that hated everybody, wouldn't spend a coin on anything, was just a really horrible person.
Yeah.
And because of his evil ways, he caught the devil's eye. So the devil basically came and paid him a visit and was like, you're coming with me, son, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And Stingy Jack goes, no, let me just have a little bit of a tipple. I want a little bit of whiskey before we go. Is that okay? And the devil, because he's so obliging, says, sure, no problems. Let's go in and let's have a drink. So they have one, they have two, they have quite a few. They're knocking them back, all of these whiskeys. It comes time to pay for the said alcohol. And of course,
Yeah.
Stingy's got no money on him. And the devil's like going, well, it's not on me. Like, why should I be paying it? And Stingy tricks the devil by saying to him, oh, well, you're such an all powerful being. Surely you can just turn yourself into a coin and you can pay the innkeep for the whiskey. So, okay, the devil, obliging that he is, just goes, sure, boom, poof. He becomes a coin, which Stingy quickly picks up and puts in his pocket. But he's also got a cross in his pocket, so he traps the devil within his pocket.
Right.
So the devil's all like,
Sneaky,
this
Stingy.
all-powerful being is like, here, and
Let me out. Let me out.
Stingy just says, no problems, no problems. I'll let you out, but you've got to give me a decade of peace. So the devil goes,
Yeah.
yep, sure, no problems. Again, wonderfully obliging. After a decade, the devil comes up to Stingy. Stingy says, okay, it's time to come with me. Stingy once again says, oh, no, you know what? I wouldn't mind just having an apple. Before I go with you, I wouldn't mind having an apple. Devil says, no problems. Let me just jump up that tree and grab an apple for you, Stingy. Here you go. And as he's doing that, Stingy carves some crosses into the tree and traps the devil within the tree. Okay. So
He's just got a gripe against the devil somehow.
Stingy has like stitched the devil up twice, right? So the devil's in there, oh, please let me out. Please let me out. And basically Stingy says, well, if let me be and just oh, you cannot take me, I'll let you out. So the devil goes, sounds like a deal. No problem. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So all of this goes on. Stingy lives out his long, miserable life, being stingy to everybody around him, and he dies. And then when he dies, he goes up to heaven's gates, and obviously heaven goes, no, thank you.
Nay. We've been watching
Get
you,
on your
son.
bike, son.
Nay.
Get on your bike. And of course, they don't get tricked by coins and apples. So then Stingy just comes down and he walks down to hell, and the devil goes, I've met you before.
Yeah.
You've caused me a bit of grief. You're not coming in either. So after that, the devil says, but what I will do is I'll give you these coals, these embers, and you can have those. And Stingy put them in a lantern, and which happened to be, which is where the
Right.
carving out the pumpkin or turnip and putting a flame in it came from. So a really boring story.
But
Which
that's so interesting.
do you think?
And so,
Thinking
but because
it
it
sounds
led
like
to that tradition, but
I
I'm
don't
sitting
understand
here
how
like,
hell's got anybody in it if the devil is so stupid. Like, no offense,
if I was the devil, I would have hired him. I'm like, you,
I
sir, have a
yeah,
knack for cunning. Would you like to go and work on the crossroads for a little while? Because you
yeah.
strike a
Go
good
stand next to
bargain.
Papa Legbar.
Yeah. And, Crowley from Supernatural and all that. Like, make them have a run for their money. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where it comes from. That's where carving a bit like in Ireland it was originally turnips, but of course when it moved over to not moved over when it was taken by the Irish people over to America, they then
Yeah.
there was more pumpkins around, and let's face it, it's going to be easier to carve a pumpkin than it is
Pumpkin
a
than a
turnip.
turnip. Yeah.
And so that's where that one comes from, which is
So, question.
Mhm.
With the lantern and the carving of the pumpkin, like what was the purpose of giving him the
The coals?
The coals, yeah.
To
For
light his
chosen,
way. I suppose it's just to light his way so he can see
so he can see
what
through
his version of
purgatory.
purgatory.
Yeah,
Because he's obviously
yeah.
just a soul that's walking the earth for
Wandering
the end of
lost.
time now, because
Yeah.
he has no afterlife.
So
So
I wonder if the purpose of the Jacko-lantern is to guide the souls on their way through, like while they're crossing over to this plane back to where they need to go
I don't know. If it was
in
me,
some
I'm putting it
way.
there to scare the bejesus out of said souls
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they
yeah,
don't
yeah,
come near my house. Like, we're
yeah.
full here.
Or maybe
We've
it's a
already got
warning.
stingy.
Yeah, maybe it's
We
a warning. Piss off, stingy Jack. We got
Yeah,
nothing
stingy.
for you. You get some of your own back.
So I find that hysterical.
Yeah,
Then I
hysterical.
looked into
Yeah.
some of the other things. So what else do we do? What's one of the first things we do when we go into our reject shop or where we're buying our stuff
What are
from?
our costumes gonna be?
What are our costumes? What are our decorations? I want to go with
Yeah.
one decoration:
Yep.
spiders and spider webs.
Yes, yes.
Now, I'm going to let you talk about what spiders mean in more of a spiritual sense. But what I'm going to say is, when I was reading this, I was sort of like interested that people actually believed that if you put a candle and you lit the candle, and if a spider fell in it and burned, that was a sign that a witch was present.
What?
I know. I'm like,
That
don't understand how there can be
I've
any
never
connection
heard that.
between the two.
Never heard that. I mean,
And I'm like thinking to myself, if the witch is like supposed to be controlling all of those things, surely her spider would be an ally. But anyway,
yeah, I don't want
um,
to go. I don't want it to go on my candle. I mean, I get
uh,
a lot of flies in my candles, but that's that's
no.
that's
So
their fault because they're all like
uh,
bright light.
apparently, lighting the candles and watching the candles would be a warning system, an alarm system for you that if a spider dropped into it and burnt up, you need to be on guard because there was a witch present. But there is more to
That is
spiders than
true.
that. So, Tay, tell us what
Yeah.
more.
So not a superstition I'm familiar with, but spiders are in themselves liminal beings because they dwell in between places with their webs. And a lot of the mythology to spiders is about weaving your own fate and you know, they're associated with fate beings like the fates from and the Norns from Norse mythology, the fates from Greek mythology, and things like that. And they're all about weaving your own futures and weaving your own stories and things like that. So I find it interesting that a teller of stories, a spinner of fates, would be a symbol for this time for
Yeah, because
Halloween.
I knew of spiders as being a messenger of from the other world. So that's
Yeah.
I sort of like had that crossover. So I didn't know about the fates and that, but although I have seen that in quite a few. When I'm thinking about it now, I've seen that in quite a few series where they do that, catch the spider and
Yeah.
let it
Yeah.
spin its web within the
Yeah.
thing, and you almost read the web for what
Yeah.
prophecy's coming. But
And
I did
spiders
know of the
are funny because they're creatures of creation. They're known as creator spirits in many indigenous cultures, but they're also creatures of death. So you've
yeah,
got this like
yes.
conception, death, magic going through the life cycle of a spider and being liminal in nature. It speaks to the I like to think of a female spider as being the last harvest, like being
Yeah,
the last supper before it lays its eggs, surrenders itself to the dark, and then the spiderlings hatch, and then a lot of species of spider consume the mother, and so
yes.
and that perpetuates new life. And I think in a spiritual sense, the spider symbology is really relevant to like Halloween and how we honor our seasonal cycles. So,
Yeah,
and that people
absolutely.
also scared shitless of spiders. So that could be it as well. Arachnophobia is a
Absolutely.
thing.
We have so many spiders that we put out for Halloween, and one of them is this massive spider. And when I say massive, its leg span would be maybe a meter and a half across, and its body's like this with red flashing eyes. And for some reason, it got named Hector. I don't understand. So
What?
I don't know. I
Heck
don't
the
know.
spider.
And we would just put Hector somewhere and it was you had to find Hector. So every year you have to find Hector, and we've just now got we've got so many spiders. We always pick a section of our house to do as the spider's lair, and we've actually
I love that.
we've got cocooned bodies.
You know what that reminds me of? That scene in Chamber of Secrets where Harry and Ron go to visit Aragon, the spider.
Yeah.
Ron's all like, Harry! And he's like pulling on him, he's like, spiders! And there's just like spiders pissing out of all of the corners of the forest. And
yeah, we have a whole section set up that way. That's like one of our things. Okay, so witches, we all know why. We've talked about witchcraft a little bit in a preceding podcast. So people dress up as witches. That's like a popular one. But we also have things like and ghouls. We can understand why we're dressing up as ghouls, because we're trying to hide. We're trying to not. We're trying to blend in with the crowd, right? They're our peeps, and we're trying to blend in with them when we dress up that way.
Yeah.
But we also have vampires. Like vampires is a very, very common Halloween thing.
Yes, they are.
Why would that be?
I just had a thought about that. I mean, apart from being one of the supposed malevolent beings that might be lurking in and around, in a camouflage sense, wouldn't it be better to be scarier than what is scaring you? Like
you're gonna be scariest.
Trumps a spirit, you know, like I am literally dead walking.
Yeah, exactly. You're dead.
Yeah.
I am the undead.
Yeah.
Trump card. It's a trump card.
It's a trump card. It's a trump card.
But it's interesting. Vampires fascinate me, absolutely fascinate me for a lot of reasons. As you know, I love mythology, like literally love it. And I try to incorporate some of that in my book series so yes, there is going to be vampires in my book series at some point in time.
Yeah.
But it fascinates me because and I've got a list right in front of me here of all of the different vampiric creatures across the world and from all of different belief systems.
Yeah.
And I literally cannot see a country that does not have a version of a vampire.
Yes.
There literally isn't
there is
one.
some gnarly variations out there.
There are some notable variations. One that people wouldn't know about and a lot of people aren't aware of is that you've got Lilith, who was said to be one of the first vampires.
Yes.
And she comes from Hebrew text from Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
Mesopotamia, yeah.
Mesopotamia.
Mesopotamia.
I'm going
to go Mesopotamia. And I'm going to go with That's so funny. Mesopotamia. And Lilith has also been purported to be Adam's first wife. Like, ooh, how deep does this go?
That whole thing, because that's what inspired like Lamias, and which were like serpentine, demonic, succubus type demons that came in and like drank blood and literally sucked the very life essence out of you.
Yeah, there's so
much lore around that.
There's so many scary ones here, and we've got, obviously it gets difficult when you look at the strigoi or the striga or the striges, because they can
like
mean
a cross between a witch and a vamp.
Yeah, they can, and in different cultures they will be. Strigoi is, again, they're in each culture they're slightly different. So I don't want to be offensive to anybody, but we know that they're definitely considered a bad guy.
Yeah.
In the world of things like this. But you and I both have the one that freaks us out the most, or one of the most. And what's its name again? I'm just going to look it up. Let me get down there. In the Philippines.
The aswang.
Oh my goodness.
What the
Why
fuck?
did Grimm need to make that so freaking scary?
Look, I'm going to be honest. I got a real like hard no line, barrier, border, fucking boundary when it comes to harming women and children, especially like pregnancy and infanticide and stuff. Like it just triggers me to hell. And so
and it sucked on the belly, didn't it? Sucked on the belly button.
The aswang is a Filipino vampire demon fucking thing that comes in and drains the amniotic fluid out of a pregnant woman's belly to then slurp up the fetus like a suit, like slushy.
Yep.
Disgusting.
Yep. And there's a
So
lot. So there's a lot of these. So let's just
yeah,
say I can understand why people have, every culture has a vampire.
yeah,
Every culture, and going back literally to the beginning of times. As
which
soon as we
is
could start
something we're
thinking of
gonna
these,
have to like deep dive rabbit hole
we have to
into.
so deep dive in that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, obviously, is you've got zombies, ghouls, revenants,
Yes,
right? Which,
revenants. I remember reading Anne Rice's interview with a vampire, and you know, her take on the revenant. I always just loved that, and I was super shitty that they never included it in any of the, you know,
yeah,
the movies, because
yeah,
I just thought it was so cool. But in today's, you know, European countryside, Romania, places like that, they still believe that their beloved dead people are going to rise from the grave as revenants and come and steal their
yeah,
souls, drain their blood. They believe in zombies. You know, they still have practices which are like since the
absolutely.
medieval times, where they're, you know, placing bolts in bodies and putting cement over graves and things like that to
Yeah,
make
they
sure they
they
don't
actually,
rise.
a lot of the original staking was to try to lock the body in
Yeah.
the grave,
So
which, and I can't remember where it is, but there's also placing money. They would hold a coin, or, and but I think that's more going
there's
to
a
the
lot of
afterlife.
yeah, there's a lot of burial customs that go to giving the deceased a coin to, you know, guide them on their way, put
Yeah,
on their eyes type thing,
yes,
to
that's the
appease
one.
them so they're not coming back for things. And it's all very interesting, but all of that weaves into this innate fear we have of the dead and spirit beings and ghouls and ghosts and goblins and such coming to roam among us for an
Yeah, I think it's
evening.
basically we've got this concept that know your place.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if you're a fey creature, you need to stay in fairyland.
In
Like,
fairy realm. And it's funny that we bring up the Fae, because that was actually inspired a lot of the lore behind the tricking part of trick or treating. So, especially because we're coming from Celtic Gaelic origins with Samhain and everything, and they, you know, that they've got a whole mythology of Fae. And Fae in the witching world and in the magical spiritual world are known to be tricksters, and they're known to be cunning, and working with them is not an easy feat, and it's
no, and because they
definitely
don't
not.
think like us,
No, they're
and
just
and
beyond it.
we want to assume that everybody has a moral set,
Yes,
a,
yeah,
a view of time the same way we have a view of time,
yeah,
and fey creatures, they that's not how they work.
yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, they're a force unto themselves, and they could not give two shits whether you are satisfied or not. It's all about them there and there in the minute.
Mhm.
And I think that's because they're just so widely connected to like the elemental forces and the ethereal planes and things. Like, it's, you know, our physical struggles and things mean nothing to them,
Nothing,
and
no.
so we coming to them petitioning for stupid shit, they're going to turn around and be like, well, that was dumb, so I'm going to throw a pie in your face, and that usually looks like stealing your shit when you really need it.
Sneaky stuff that comes up and bites you in the bum. So yeah, if
Exactly.
you've been bitten in the bum in the last couple of days, have a look and have a think. Because even things like pots boiling over, when way quicker, you turn away and it's just like, oh,
I literally was cooking veggies last night, and I know I put enough water in the bottom of it because I was like, this, I don't want it to burn down. And I
yep,
only had it on, like, you know, just above low heat, and it was like beans and corn and whatever.
yep,
And like, I had it on there for probably half an hour, just sort of simmering
yep.
because I was waiting for chicken and things. And then I got up and I was like, what is that tinging noise? And I could like hear it, and it was just like had all evaporated.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, how?
How
How?
how that
How?
Makes no mathematical sense.
No,
So,
no.
and my understanding, and I read this really great book way back when, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. And it mentioned to me too that there is some concepts. I could not find any collaboration to this on the internet today. So Google has not supported me in this. So
Google
I'll
has
put
let us down.
that's my disclaimer. But I had read this book which was wonderful about, European Fey stories with Irish, Welsh, all of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
had it that the fairy folk changed courts at 6 monthly intervals, and that was the night.
What?
Yeah, that was the night when you
That
were
they
most like
swapped over.
they swapped over, and you needed to be out of their way when they did that because it was
Wow.
really quite dangerous
Yeah,
to be around out at night when they were actually moving court from one side of the world to the other side of the world.
that's
And
fascinating.
of course, that was the 6 monthly period that fell in line with this Halloween, which I find
Yeah,
that interesting. I can't find any reference. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, please let us know because I find that a fascinating
I'm
concept as
gonna
well.
try and look that up now.
Yeah, that they've
Like
moved
that's
court. They moved
interesting.
court. Um,
Interesting.
so I had seen it backed up where people are saying that the courts are more powerful. So you've got what
Hmm.
is it, the Sealy court, and then you've got there's two different courts of
Yeah, I'm not sure what the other one is.
yeah. So all I can again, there's two courts, and it's basically the good guys, the bad guys, for
Yeah,
want of a better way of describing them, and they're active at different times of the year,
yeah, yeah,
apparently. So they're more likely. So there, a lot of these things merge, and it's merging around a calendar, and it seems to make sense to me why we would think that because
yeah,
it is a life cycle kind of thing. So I can understand when you're talking about these wheels and how things turn over and change from life to death to life again, a beautiful spider analogy.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
it sort of like kind of makes sense to me,
And
100% how we've
also
got this.
in that too, like um when people are like, oh, well, even in that logic, oh, well, we as witches don't celebrate Samhain here in October. We actually celebrate it in April, May, because
Yep.
that in the southern wheel is a wheel of the year
Yes.
is how it falls.
Yes.
But we can still honor Halloween like as Halloween at this time of year because we are still sitting in a liminal space of
Yes.
which is Beltane or Beltane. And instead of it being like honoring the dead and things like that, moving into the dark, we're moving back into the light and we're playing with the energies of conception and the union of divine masculine and feminine, however that may look. But we are still very much in a liminal space. And
Yep.
so for me, I like to think of Halloween as like that extra treat in my year where I can have my ritualistic honoring of Samhain in April, May.
Yep.
And then in October, November, I can have Halloween and enjoy the fun and the trick-or-treating and the costumes. So yeah.
So, most important question: what are you dressing up as this year, Tay?
I actually thought about doing a Gorgon. I've got dreads, so I was gonna like
Oh,
maybe get some wire or something and like I make them look like snakes and then get like snake eye, cat eye
oh, that is
contacts and
cool.
do like scale makeup and stuff. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was
I got to be honest. I have not got my head around what I'm going to do this year. I usually have a plan so far in advance, and by now I've normally done multiple tries at my makeup because
yeah, yeah.
we take it really seriously in this household. So my daughter can do like a fake cut across her neck like you've got no idea. It's the latex, it's the rice bubbles to make it look more crunchy and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm really not sure what I'm going to do
I
this year.
love prosthetics and special effects makeup and stuff. I don't know if anyone's watched Glow Up, but I'm so into that.
I always think of that. I'm like, what can we do? I had one year where I came as Maleficent, and so I managed to
Wow,
get
that would have
a
been
headpiece.
cool.
but I didn't just want just the headpiece and or whatever. So I did prosthetic cheekbones. So I gave myself really sharp razor edge cheekbones, and then I contoured all in. It was so cool. Problem is, I always ran around the house like being Maleficent for about 2 weeks before and after. My kids were just like take off the hat, Mum.
I love it.
Take it off. But anyway. So to sum it up, enjoy Halloween.
Yes,
Get into it.
enjoy Halloween.
I would say be a little bit, for the people who are like, and I got a lot of this. My kids did go to religious schools, and I got a lot of people that were like, no, 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 you can't celebrate that because it's anti-Christian. And I will point out that, yeah, I know. I'll just point out that Christianity did its very best to take it over,
but
so
they failed miserably.
They did, and it couldn't have been all bad if they tried to incorporate it.
Exactly.
Like, if you're trying to incorporate it, we're not talking about, making deals with the devil here. We're not talking about any ritual sacrifice. We're not talking about any of that. If the actual church, on numerous occasions, tried to incorporate it into their own calendar, I think we can safely say it's not the devil's work.
Well,
That's all I'm going to say.
Technically, historically speaking, they did make sacrifices, the Gaelic peoples, the Celtic peoples, to the ancestors and for future great harvests and things at this time. But if you want, you can leave your sacrifices to the Samhain part of the year and just enjoy Halloween as
just enjoy Halloween.
Spirited costume. And what's the harm in it? Like, who cares if it's American or not? Like,
yeah,
copyrighted. Christianity really needs to like look up copyright rules because my God, is anything original? Like
no, and that's the thing. So I think just enjoy it. Think up some crazy. I wish I could tag it in something, but I wouldn't know how to do that. But you sent me that amazing how to make the critter cupcakes. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to say to everybody. Be inventive, do some great makeup, do some great ways of making your food look like something horrendous.
Take it as an opportunity to
exactly just enjoy it and don't overthink it.
Outrageous and be another person for a night. Be something else, someone else for a night that you really wanted to try out. And I like the ones with a bit of humor too.
Yeah, but just think when you're walking out there with your kids trick or treating, and you've got a ghoul standing next to you. Maybe you've got a ghoul standing next to you. Is all I'm going to say.
Maybe Stingy Jack is like, hey, you got a coin? I'm going to go up there and have a bit of a tipple. Hold my lantern.
He's really the most bright. I was hoping for something way more. All of the movies when you see the big pumpkin-headed, horrible, horrendous, frightening things that's in the middle of him. In the middle of a cornfield. You know how it's always in the middle of a cornfield, and I'm like, oh, when I saw it, I went, oh, Stingy Jack. Stingy Jack. Great name. I'm all behind it. And then I read the story and I went, oh, it's a bit anticlimactic.
It's a bit anticlimactic.
I don't know what I wanted. But I wanted a big pumpkin head. I wanted to have like one of those scythes or whatever they're called. I wanted it to be rusty. I wanted it to be crunchy with dried blood. I wanted it to be really OP. And Stingy just didn't hit the mark for me. But
maybe Stingy needs a revamp. Maybe we need to like bring him back and give him some style and like urban lore that F out of Stingy Jack.
Yep.
Hashtag Stingy Jack.
Yeah, and I pretty much think I can say with confidence that bobbing for apples is not a good way to choose your future mate.
And don't look in mirrors, for fuck's sake. Don't look in mirrors and think that creepy ass thing behind you in the mirror is your soulmate. Like, nay. Maybe in a past life if they're dead, but like not anymore.
No.
Move on. Well,
absolutely.
What are we doing next week, Petra?
I have completely forgotten.
Oh my goodness. Well, shit. We better rectify that. So next week, we're talking toxic positivity.
Oh no.
Not. Ah!
Now that I'm just going to say, I know we're not talking about it yet,
Yep.
but expect rants.
Yep.
Expect me to be triggered like you've got no idea, because
Yep.
this is something that just grinds my gears
Yeah.
so hard. What a surprise.
What a surprise.
And
What a surprise, you cynical thing.
another thing that gets me.
I really wanted to
Anyways,
say something like cheeky and silver liney there, like, oh, it'll be fine, just it'll be fine.
no.
But I'll save it for next episode. I'll think.
Yeah.
I'll have a mull on it.
Look,
Alrighty.
everything can be used as a learning experience, Tay.
Oh, fuck that.
No,
Sometimes shit happens, all right?
that's what Google's for. I'll learn off Google. Thank you.
Oh, God. There's always a silver lining. Okay, moving on. That's next episode. But for now, remember, curiosity may have killed a few cats, but there is no growth in blissful ignorance.
I'm betting they were black cats.
They were, yeah, well, it's Halloween. Of course,
It's Halloween. It's got to be a black cat.
Rehashing the black cats here. Alrighty. Get groovy.
Enjoy, everybody.
See ya. Bye.